What's up everyone, and welcome to another video. Today I want to be showing you my league starter slash build that I'm currently playing. This initially started as a trickster, however currently it's a Pathfinder. I sort of league started with this, but I built on it, so obviously in its current state it's not really a league starter anymore. So I'm playing a totem based toxic rain build. As you can see here, we have 5 toxic rain totems, and we're using caustic arrow for general clearing, which is linked to Mirage Archer. It's a very tanky build, and as you can see here, it's a pretty fast, speedy build, and it comes in at about 10.8 million DPS as it is right now, or 10.9 million. So, let's take a look at the tree. So initially I started this as a trickster, and I traveled all the way up to atrophy here. And anyway, I got some inspiration from a different build from a guy named Cerberus 500. And I have been applying some this Thread of Hope in particular to the build for some increased duration. I also noticed that my totems were dying quite a lot, so I had to travel to these totem nodes here, and they've been serving me very well. So because I'm closer to Duelist, I also have access to some extra life nodes that I otherwise would not have access to. Right, so let's do a gear overview first. First off, the weapon. This has been with me since day 3 of the league. I'm currently looking at upgrading it, however I am I'm not sure how to go about with that, so I bought a synth bow, so I'm working on that. It's a pretty generic toxic rainbow. Doesn't have speed. The attack speed would have been a big buff, but it doesn't have that. So as of right now, it has a +1 socketed gems, +2 support gems, chaos dot multi, damage over time. In there I have linked empower, level 4 empower, phantasmal toxic rain. That's the 2 additional arrow toxic rain. I have Void Manipulation, Increased Area of Effect, which I can swap out with Conk Effect, and Vicious Projectiles, and Ballista Totem. Ballista Totem is pretty much mandatory to turn your projectile into a totem. The quiver is a very bad quiver. I've had it for a while. Probably going to be replacing it soon. Generic dot multi. Totem placement speeches, which 30% is quite a lot, given that not a whole lot of other quivers actually give a beneficial buff to Toxic Rain. Arguably you could be using a pierce quiver so that your caustic arrow will pierce a target, however I just have pierce linked within it. So there's that. Helmet, I'm using a Hailnegator, and this Hailnegator will need some explanation. I'll get back to that after I'm done with all the gear to explain exactly how a Hailnegator functions. For Amulet, I'm using a +1 Old Dexterity, Malevolence Reserve, and Spider, as well as some Life and Olres. Pretty generic. These are quite easy to craft, or something similar is quite easy to craft within Harvest by simply chaos spamming onto or Reforge with Chaos, not actually chaos spamming, Reforge with Chaos within Harvest. This ring is quite the beast. It's strength int, resist, and high life. Picked this up for, I think it was 2 exalts. And I needed the int on that so that I could wear the Hailnegator, because the Hailnegator has a 138 int requirement, which for a ranger is a pretty rough requirement. My other ring is a Despair on Hit ring. These are extremely easy to make by using the Harvest Caster Reforge onto Hunter items. Very, very easy. So that is also quite simple to get. Here I have my second curse, which is Enfeeble, on a Null and Void gloves. Much like the Hailnegator, I will get back to how this glove works, because at first glance it doesn't look that amazing. For my belt, I'm using a Torrent's Reclamation, which I sniped for, well, I would say sniped. It was listed for a while, but I got it for 13 Exalted Orbs on day 3 or 4 of the league. Malevolence, movement speed, and that's ideal for this build. If you cannot afford a Torrent's Reclamation, you can use the Flow Untethered, which is the unupgraded version, which is about 10 times as cheap However, it doesn't give a greater Harbinger of Time. Instead, it gives a Harbinger of Time. So you lose the greater part, which is the little bit of a... It's a buff. I think it's a little bit more action speed. Maybe a little bit more uptime on this one. I'll also speak about that in a... Well, after I'm done going over the gear. How that works mechanically. For boots, I'm using a Dream Quest slipper with intelligence, life, movement speed, and 45 lightning res and some filler resistances. This here, I will also give my reason to why I have this. It's a bit of a weird choice. I haven't really seen anyone use Dream Quest slippers, so we'll get to that. And the Kintsugi speaks for itself. 20% less damage taken if you have not been hit recently, which is in the past 4 seconds. The Kintsugi is stacking along with Wind Dancer, which also has the same mod on there, so you have 40% less damage taken if you haven't been hit recently. These are very good defenses if you multiply them with the fact that this build is more or less, as we can see on the calculation here, more or less dodge capped. So that means that I have a very low chance of getting hit, and when I do get hit, I take a lot less damage. That helps against the one-shots, and that is all nice and stuff. However, obviously that will not save me in all cases, because once you do get hit twice in a row, maybe you're unlucky, you may die. Which is where the Hailnegator comes in. Now, the Hailnegator is, in my opinion, one of the most underused items in the game. It is extremely powerful, and I'll explain just why. So, it has a 8% life roll, or up to 8% life roll. You get 1 extra spirit charge for every Abyss Jewel that's affecting you. Now, Abyss Jewels for me kind of suck, but I got these fractured Abyss Jewels, 4 more in my tree. That's why I have a total of 6 charges. And they're not that great for damage, but it is, after all, an Abyss Jewel, so it gives me a Spirit Charge, and the Spirit Charges are just that good. Alright, the next line. Gain a Spirit Charge every second. If I was to remove my Hailnegator and put it back on, you'll see that I will start generating 1 Spirit Charge every second. Next line. You lose all Spirit Charges when you take a Savage hit. Now, Savage hit used to be 35%, but it's been buffed to only being 15% of your maximum life. So if I lose more than 15% of my maximum life, I will lose all my Spirit Charges. Now, the build is designed to not get hit. It has a lot of dodge, it has Wind Dancer, which technically doesn't really do much for not getting hit. It has a decent chunk of evasion, right about 20,000. So all in all, the build is not designed to be hit, so it should be possible for me to get my Spirit Charges back between every time I'm getting hit. And it kind of is. Like, I'm noticing that I'm not getting hit frequent enough, so I'm actually getting my Spirit Charges back. Here comes the beauty of this thing. Recover 3% of life, and in this case also energy shield, when you lose a Spirit Charge. If you take a Savage hit, you lose all Spirit Charges, whatever you had built up until that time. This is why you don't want to have 20 charges, because you're probably not going to be able to get to 20 before getting slapped down again and lose all your charges again. But when you do get slapped, you lose all your Spirit Charge, you recover 3% of life and energy shield, multiplied by how many charges you lost, which in my case is 6, so I'm getting 18% life back if I take a Savage hit. Now, a Savage hit is 15% of the total, of your total health. So this only counts for life, not for energy shield. So if I lose 15% of my life, it will proc my Hailnegator, and it will be as if I never got hit. The hit will not register on my life. There will not be a single time where my life is visually below max. If I get hit for 20% of my total life, and I recover 18%, to me and to the game, it will only register as a hit that took 2% of my life. This works in the same action, in the same moment as you getting hit. So this thing is technically a cast when damage taken, in my case, 18% reduced damage taken. So if I do happen to get chunked, it will be mitigated by the Hailnegator. If I don't get chunked and instead I take small damages, I will just not lose my charges, and the charges will be saved until later, until I do take a savage hit. It is very important that you get at least 5 Abyss Jewels so that you mitigate the Hailnegator itself, which means that if you take a savage hit, that means you take 15% of your max life as damage. It's very nice to basically recoup that back in the same hit. So that's why I have 6. I could go down to 5 and it will still definitely be worth using. It's an amazing helmet, and I think that a lot more people should be using this. It is fantastic. It's one of the best helmets. It's my favorite unique in the game, so I'm just happy that I was able to be using this for once. Anyway, enough about the Hailnegator. I can talk about this thing for years. If you have any questions about it, do post it in the comments below, and I will maybe explain more about it if you didn't understand it correctly. So the next thing I want to talk about is the Null and Void gloves, and for that we're actually going to go ahead and go to a rampage on the wiki. And this says, removes all elemental ailments on rampage. Gain immunity to physical damage for 1.5 seconds on rampage. And you have rampage. So this thing gives you rampage. Rampage is a great buff to have, as you can see here. It gives a 1% increased movement speed per 20 rampage stacks, which means that you have 50% movement speed once you reach 1000 rampage. Obviously, once you're at 500, you already have 25, so it's not like it's ever worthless to use it. You don't need to have 1000, but it will cap at 1000. So at its maximum power, this will give you 50% movement speed, and on top of that, it's also going to give you 200% increased damage. Now, for a damage over time build, that is amazing, because scaling damage is not easy other than getting gem levels, so having that is just amazing. Now, other than that, you see these rampage tiers. What this means is that every time you reach a rampage, these are considered rampages. So you have different tiers of rampages, and every single one is considered a rampage. And as you can see here, you gain immunity to physical damage for 1.5 seconds when you reach a rampage. Now, in the current league mechanic, where we have Ultimatum, you're going to be fighting a lot of monsters. So I would safely say that up until about 220, you'll be almost physical immune, since you get 1.5 seconds of physical immunity every time you reach one of these stages. So you get 15, 30, 45, 70, 100, 135, 175, 220 kills. Every single time you'll get 1.5 seconds of pure physical damage immunity. I'm a Pathfinder, so for me to remove ailments doesn't really matter, but if you are not a Pathfinder, then that's obviously amazing as well. On top of that, it gives up to 70 life and 30 strength, so that's obviously a very nice glove to have. Very underrated glove. Again, this thing is worth right about 2 chaos, and the Hailnegator is worth right about 3 chaos, so those are extremely powerful for what they are. Over to the Thorn's Reclamation. This thing is very strong with very quality of life, makes you extremely fast. The Harbinger buff is up for 8 seconds every 10 seconds, so there's a 2-second downtime, as you can see here, and it's back up again. During this time, you get a action speed modifier of 20%. It's like having a tailwind, a maxed out tailwind. So basically, it will be about, let's say, what would be like 17% action speed on average, if you were to count the downtime. On top of that, you get life recovery rate, you get attack and cast speed, you get energy shield recovery rate, you get cooldown recovery rate. Those are all really great stats to have. This belt is a bit expensive. It currently goes for 17 Exalted Orbs. There's some for 15, as you can see here. You can, however, go for a cheaper version, which would be the Flow Untethered, which you can find right about here, which grants a Harbinger of Time. Now, the Harbinger of Time gives you a Flow Untethered. It gives you 8 seconds. It lasts for 8 seconds with a cooldown of 20 seconds. 20 seconds? So yeah, that's obviously a way larger downtime compared to the Thorn's Reclamation. I didn't know it was that low. I would say it's still worth using. It is still very strong. Let me see if I can get a quick link to the Torrent's Reclamation. As you can see here, there's the Torrent Reclamation. I'm not sure if they show the Greater Harbinger of Time. Doesn't really give any numbers here. However, it is, like you can see here, it's 8 seconds up, 2 seconds down. So it's just amazing. Definitely worth getting, one of the priority items in my opinion to be getting. The increased life recovery rate also applies to Hailnegator. So if you have a 20% increased life recovery rate on top of that, then obviously if you have other sources, you can actually scale the 3% life that you gain back when you lose Spirit Charge can obviously be scaled higher. So numeric. Over to my boots, I chose Dream Quest slippers, and the reason why I chose these on this build in particular is because I feel like the 10% reduced movement speed downside is not that great, given that I'm walking around with already, I'm not sure what my actual movement speed is, but about 300 according to this. I'm at a 414, which makes sense because I do have a Harbinger up, so I think it does count the Harbinger. So at that point, 10% movement speed is not really a deal breaker. And if anything, I just really like that my Withering Step has a really short cooldown. I'm not sure what the cooldown is normally. It's 3 seconds. I'm scaling that all the way down to a 1.46 seconds. And previously I found that if I was to throw mines and run, in a lot of cases I would run out of movement skills, so because obviously the Withering Step is locking my recovery of any of these skills. So to mitigate that, I decided that Dream Quest slippers are for me gonna be an amazing boot. It's obviously kind of up to you as user whether you want to be using this. I think they're great. If you don't like them, then don't use them. Yeah, so that's it for the gear. Mechanically, I think I explained it roughly about right. My flasks that I'm using are Enduring Hybrid Flask with blood, corrupting blood removal. I don't really need that for but that's alright to have. Here's an Evasion Flask, which is terribly rolled. Ignore that, but it's basically a flat evasion with % evasion in the same flask. Very useful, as that gives you a lot of evasion in one flask, so very good. I have a Basalt Flask here. I have a Quartz Flask and a Movement Speed Flask, obviously. Now, as for the tree, this is pretty much what it looks like. I think we can move over to PoE in this case. Phase Acro. Let's just go over the keystones. We have Phase Acro, and I think that's about it. Yep. I got Master Fletcher. I have Abyss Jewels in where I can pretty much. So as you can see, I have one there, over here. I have one in my Cluster Jewel, and then I have one over here. And I think that is about it. Yeah, and then one over at Duelist. Right, so for Cluster Jewels, I have a Spiked Concoction here, which gives 20% increased Flask effect, as well as attack speed during Flask effect, as well as 20% increased Flask charges gained. That's what the Alchemist Genius buffs does. I would say any build ever should be using Spiked Concoction. It's absolutely overpowered, and it is so easy to get, so definitely get yourself this. Along with that, I rolled for Brood for potency, which gives damage over time and Flask charges gained, which is obviously really fucking good. On top of that, I have increased life mana recovery rate from Flask, which makes my hybrid flask that I'm using quite potent for recovery. As far as my other jewel, I have a Megalomaniac with Exposure to Therapy, Enduring Composure, and Peak Vigor. These were kind of a bonus. I went mainly for the Enduring Composure because it gives you 1 Endurance charge every second if you have been hit recently. Now, I designed this build to not get hit. However, you cannot rely on that all the time. You will get hit, it's a fact. So I made this build to not get hit. However, when it does finally take a hit, it should mitigate a lot of damage. And as of right now, with my current setup, it should mitigate roughly 90% of a physical damage hit that I'm taking on the first attempt. I thanked the sweep from the Gift of the Goddess Izaro, the part where he like does a 360 and slashes. It didn't even hit my life. It took about 10% of my life because of Hailnegator. So this guy is absolutely OP for tanking. I got a self-cast Immortal Coil here, which lasts for about 3 seconds, and it has a 2-second downtime. So that is also very, very strong. And along with Enduring Composure, given that I'm hit recently, I get some extra duration on it because it will then consume the endurance charges. Yeah, so Immortal Coil for self-cast, in my opinion, very strong. A lot of damage you can always see coming, so I would say there is no shame in using that for the self-cast, and I find it very easy to use it. So Exposure Therapy and Peak Vigor was just something I found on the market along with it, which fit the build quite well. Flask Life Recovery Rate 8% life, and here is 8% damage over time multiplier, which is actually a huge damage multiplier. And the damage over time is really, resistance is really good for the League mechanic as is. So definitely happy with this one for now. I will be looking into a different one later, but for now that will have to do. So for the large cluster jewel, this is the absolute best in slot you can possibly get. You have Touch of Cruelty, which causes your chaos skills to have a 10% chance to hinder enemies on hit. This does not matter whether it's a spell or an attack, and since we have a lot of attack speed, this will pretty much be up all the time. Enemies that you hinder take 10% increased chaos damage. Very strong. Misery Everlasting is kind of just a filler. It's not great, but it will have to do. Unholy Grace is obviously a very strong, as it gives attack speed and 30% chaos damage. And what I found is for this build in particular, it is very important that you get a lot of percent increased damage. It scales very well with Toxic Rain. So as far as this goes, this is for the Totem survivability, which is very important because the main damage is going to be from the totems, and it's very important, especially in the current Ultimatum League mechanic, that your totems stay alive, which they're doing very well along with Ironwood. So that is definitely really good. I pathed it over here because this is not really a great node, so instead I went for the double attack speed here, as well as 12% damage on each. I do have frenzy charges still. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep using those. However, this is a very strong cluster right here, as it gives movement speed, attack speed, and generic damage from the Disciple of Slaughter. Gives you charges on kill, which is a pretty decent way to get it. I'm also using Blood Rage, so honestly, getting frenzies is very easy. I got 2 frenzy charges here. So the ideal glove would obviously be to have a Null and Void along with Enfeeble and Frenzy Charge, however that is kind of hard to come by. Lastly, we have the Thread of Hope. The Thread of Hope is covering skill effect duration here. It's covering Harrier for movement speed and attack speed. It's covering Profane Chemistry. And that is about it. It's very important to get the, as you can see, that's a lot of damage that I would be potentially losing out if I didn't have this, so definitely worth going here. You have to go here anyway for exceptional performance, so you might as well Thread of Hope into these two. They're great. Right, so let's look at some skill gem links, because that is something I haven't done yet. So I already mentioned my bow. My helmet has a portal gem and a frenzy in there. The frenzy, I sometimes swap the portal gem for culling. However, nowadays I don't really feel the need to do so anymore. That's nice to do if you're going to do Gift of the Goddess or something. You just want to get done with Izaro as quick as possible in the end. But currently my damage is more than high enough to be completely fine without doing that. So I just have a portal in there for convenience. Frenzy is in there to get your frenzy uptime for bosses. Because obviously if you have spec'd into some frenzy charges, you need a way to get them. Simple. And with the current attack speed, it's very easy to just do that 5 times, because you're going to be sitting like this anyway, and then you just shoot 5 times, and then you got your frenzy charge up. You'll do a lot more damage. It's a bit Pepega, but overall I would say it's definitely worth using. As far as my Caustic Arrow link, I have Caustic Arrow linked with Mirage Archer, Pierce, Vicious Proj, Swift Affliction, Awakened, Void, Manip. Sometimes I swap out the Mirage Archer for Arrow Nova, as that could potentially create a bit of a better clear, like this. Right, so for my gloves I'm using Smoke Mine, Anomalous Withering Step, Second Wind, and Immortal Coal. The Withering Step is anomalous so that it applies 2 additional withers whenever you walk through a set of monsters, and the way that I would normally play with that is that I'll show it in a second actually. Final link is in the boots, Skittering Bots, or Skitter Bots, Blood Rage, Enlighten, and Malevolence. So let me just quickly show a map and how I would go about with that as far as the league mechanic goes. Now the damage could potentially be way higher by using a Withering Totem, however I choose not to because it's very awkward to use a Withering Totem when you have totems as your main damage. So we just don't do that. Well, it looks like we got a ritual here. That's very nice. So I just place my totems and we wait, pretty much. And the only thing I'm doing is I'm walking through these monsters with Withering Step active, so they get withered. It's simple as that. As you can see, it's very, very smooth to play. It's just like a lot of movement speed. And in a league such as this one that we're playing right now, it is very nice to just have a lot of movement speed, because there's really no point in having too much damage in your build. As long as your build can be effective, then you're good to go. Speed is also a very underrated source of defense. Okay, so this is probably the most hated part of the league mechanic. We have the stone circles, but I'll just show you roughly what it will look like in this case. So as you can see, like, something to pay attention to is obviously my spirit charges up in the corner, which you can see right here. That's worth noticing. I used to have crab barriers, but I don't have those anymore. So just look at this and just see when they get depleted, and look at my life, whether I actually took the hit or not. It's quite interesting. This also shows roughly how much I'm actually getting hit during any encounter here. I don't think I've actually been hit so far, other than dots, which is mainly the downside of this build in particular. So if anything, dots are very punishing, so that is no fun. If this will stay the same next league, I will definitely play it again as a league starter. I have had a really good time playing this. It's just amazing. It's so smooth to play, and it's just like gotten me through pretty much the entire game, like, so easily. The way I actually got into playing this was by Tuna posted this video about like league starters, and one of the builds was Bladeful Blade Blast, which is obviously something I'm quite familiar with. If you know me, then you know that I have a Poison Blade Vortex character, so for me playing Poison is a very comfort pick. It's a very comfort pick for me, so I was like, you know what, I'll do that, and we'll see how that goes. And then as I played it, it told me like, okay, you have to go level with like Toxic Rain Totems. I was like, what the fuck is that? So I started playing Toxic Rain Totems. I was like, you know what, it feels good, because at level 38 it told me, yo, it's about time you have to swap to Bladeful Blade Blast now. And I was like, you know what, I'm kind of really enjoying this, so can I just stay like this for a while? Because I tried to play Bladeful Blade Blast, and it was actually like, it just straight up, it felt horrible. It felt slow, and I've had a lot of other people that have told me the same thing, that the build just felt, or that Bladeful Blade Blast just felt extremely slow. And I decided, you know what, I'll just play this until it becomes obsolete. Maybe I won't be able to push red maps, but if I can, then I'll just do that. And it ended up just never falling off. So then I was like, you know what, I'll make it into a proper build. And this is where it's at right now. I'm pretty happy with it. That was with increased AoE. Should have probably conked it to make it actually seem better for the video, but hey, it is what it is. Yeah, so I'll leave a POB to this in the description, so if you're interested in checking that out, then feel free to do so. The build, I'm probably going to get asked this, so the build currently has cost me probably about 40 to 50 exalts. The upcoming bow that I'm about to get is probably going to make it a whole like 20, 30x more expensive, so that is coming soon. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and this kind of like a video guide thing. If you have any questions, please do let me know in the comment below. Hope you guys have a great weekend, and I will see you next time.